Good morning, Syndicate members. What is happening? It is Wednesday, which means we are live from Austin, Texas. My name is Tony Merwin. I'm your host today, as always, for Winning on Wednesdays, joined by my wonderful co-host, Joe to Mags I Go. You guys know Joe, don't you?
I'm like, dude, I'm just waiting. I'm just kind of like, all right, where are we going with this? Let's see what Tony's actually got on that freaking Excel sheet. Apparently, you have built out of nicknames. So
that was pretty clever. It's a Google Doc, actually. It's a Google Doc.
Oh, excuse me. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. How we doing this week, Mr. Merwin?
Man, I am doing outstanding as always. Today is actually my weekly win. This show today is my weekly win, what we get to do. And the reason that I say that is because I was coming into the office and I'm sitting on the elevator and there's a lady on the elevator. And as the elevator's going up, she yawned. She's like, well, I guess at least it's Wednesday. We're halfway through the week. And I was like, wow, I'm so thankful that I don't have that attitude, that I'm here. It's Wednesday. It's the day. It's the peak of the week. Today's the day that we carry our goals through to the end of the week, right? Yep. And I'm so happy that I don't have that mindset, that I get the opportunity to come up here and hang out with you, hang out with all of you guys, and understand that we're pursuing an opportunity that's much bigger than what this poor lady has to deal with, I guess. So I felt kind of bad for her, but I wanted to vomit wow all over her, but I didn't. I was like, yeah, wow. I understand how you mean it. It is hump day. Yep. Which always puzzled me why they called Wednesday hump day. I mean, don't most people get late on the weekends? Never understood that.
You know, I say anyway. What you said, it's actually, because you're saying it's much bigger than, like whatever, it is. It's much bigger than just a day, right? And we've chosen winning on Wednesday, right? Because we were sitting at Mags and we're just like, wow. And I'm like, dude, winning on Wednesday. But it really, what we're pursuing and what we're tapping into is so much bigger than just one day, y'all. Like, I hope you guys are starting. If you haven't seen it, you're probably starting to feel it ain't happening overnight, right? And that's why we keep doing this on a week in, week out basis to keep pushing, man.
100%,
and dude,
man.
You know where I'm going, like literally right after this call, dude, where I'm going on family vacay, baby.
Oh, that's right. You're headed to Florida. Is that correct?
Yep. Heading to Clearwater.
Nice.
So this is my first vacation that I've had since I've been in insurance, which has been like 8 years. So literally I haven't been on one. I mean, I go to events and stuff like that, but anybody that goes to events, that's not quite a vacation.
It's not always vacation, baby.
Yeah. But yeah, man, I'm excited. Wow. We're taking the girls. So we'll see. 3-year-old and a 4-month-old on a beach in Clearwater.
Excursions or just going out there and play it by ear and enjoy yourself?
Yep, we're going to this Hilton Resort and Spa. It's literally right off the beach. So literally we're just going to be kicking it on the beach. I mean, we're going to go check out some stuff, but nothing crazy specific. So I'm excited.
It's funny that you're going to Clearwater. That is basically the Medicare Mecca of the United States. There's insurance carriers there. There's a boatload of different Medicare FMOs, call centers. There's TPAs for the Medicare industry, all based out of Clearwater. Like there is so much Medicare action happening out of Clearwater.
I'm going to roll in there and be like, y'all do Medicaid, right?
They do some of that too out there, actually. They do so much Medicare. They do some Medicaid as well. Like that's the capital. Like anytime I'm in Clearwater, I always feel like I'm at the headquarters of Medicare. Here we go.
That's funny.
So everybody's doing something with Medicare down there. So look them up and, build some relationships while you're there. Maybe sell them some PNC.
There we go. Hey, I'm on family vacay. My wife would kill me if I worked. But anyways, guys, hey, real quick, before we bring on our special guest, please, I already am seeing a bunch of – so this is what it looks like on our end. And whoever – I'm thankful that you're unblocked on Facebook.
They should retitle that Facebook loser instead of user, since they're not getting their StreamYard comments approved.
Let StreamYard view your comments. It's literally right in the bottom of the description of the actual video. And again, it's like one click, and then it lets StreamYard push your name through, so we know who you are. And then we also, want to interact with you, but then also get you up on the screen, right? So people can see who's on the calls. And so please let them do that. But without further ado, man, do we have a show for y'all. One of my good buddies, Mr. Chris Green, the flood insurance guru, is coming on. Everybody give him a nice warm of applause. Mr. Chris, what's going on, brother?
Good, man. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. No,
I like your hat.
It's a conversation starter.
Is it really? It's fantastic.
It really is.
What is it? What is it that happens? I guess I don't really understand.
Man, it's the whole insurance world. I mean, think about it,
That's an awesome hat, man.
Hey, I should have won this hat to the Kentucky Derby.
For a lot of people, that hat would be very apropos for that Derby. What
Right.
the winner was, what, 99-1 or something like that on the odds?
81, yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's pretty much the literal shit does happen sometimes. 99-1 actually wins the race.
That's funny. Awesome,
Well, man,
man.
thank you for coming on. Joe says you are the Stevie Ray Vaughan of flood insurance. In other words, it's flooding down in Texas, and you're going to sell some insurance. Is that right?
No, we don't sell insurance. We sell an experience.
You sell an experience. I like that. Tell me about it.
Like I tell people, we are an educational organization that owns a flood insurance agency. We own a flood consulting company. We own a mitigation company. When team members come on board, I tell them you will never have to sell anything for us. We use content and our relationships to build an experience for the customer. We never want them to feel like they're being sold to. We're simply walking them down an educational journey from point A to point B. And when they get to point B, the light bulb's coming on. We're just here to help them turn the switch on.
That's good. That's good, man. And so kind of let's start there. So obviously, or actually let's start before you, because I know before you went full flood, you were doing some other things. So before you got into, like, what were you doing? And then what kind of was that light bulb that finally switched for you when it's like, man, maybe I should just be going full educational, full flood, everything like that. But like, let's start maybe before then. Like, what were you doing before flood? And then what kind of caused that transition?
Well, one of the first things probably was I was a captive agent for Liberty Mutual for about 7 years. I still tell people it's one of the best companies I ever worked for. Well, I went to buy a house in a special flood hazard area. And at the time, this insurance servicing center wasn't sure what to do in this situation. The lender wasn't sure what to do. Even the realtor wasn't sure what to do because they didn't know that the flood zone had been changed within the last 6 months. So the premiums were going to be $3,000 instead of $300. And we found this out 2 weeks before closing. So the lender's like, oh, the DTI is just going to be too high. I said, no, there's something wrong here. So I showed them, built the compliance. I went back to the local ordinance with the National Flood Insurance Program in the county and approved how that house was built before the flood zone changed. And I was able to grandfather it in with built the compliance to have that $300 rate. And at that time, I really started to see a big gap in education on the real estate side, the lender side, even the insurance agent side. Mm-hmm. But I even saw how it was having a bigger impact on the customer buying experience. I said, now there's a big problem here that if somebody could solve it, first of all, they could do well, but there's really lack of education. So that's kind of where I originally started. I decided to go independent in 2015. And when I did, I came up with floodinsuranceguru.com a couple years later. It kind of was a joke. It was just a conversation starter. But people started learning that my master's degree was actually in emergency management with a focus in flood and hazard mitigation. And what happened is they kept asking me. And one day I finally had to decide, are we going to continue to be a generalist on the auto and the home and life side, or are we going to basically walk away from it all and go full-fledged flood? So in doing that, I did some A/B testing like really any business owner should be doing. I did 30-day video challenge with Nicholas Harris. And I said, I want to see how 30 days of video impacts our business. I didn't do it on flood. I just simply did it on different insurance topics to see what the engagement was. I did a few things on flood, but what I discovered was the engagement on flood was through the roof compared to everything else. So January 1st, 2019, I said, we're going to do a flood education video every day across the country. We're going to spend the entire year traveling the country, speaking to flood victims, actually addressing things right after a flood happens, before a flood happens. So I got to the end of 2019, and I had finished a year video. My messenger was blowing up with questions. I had started blogging. I had started podcasting. Well, fast forward to today, and we just finished up about 1,300 videos in 1,300 days. We're still doing a daily flood education video every day for the last basically 4 years. And we just recently launched the world's largest flood learning center. And in 2 days, we will be one of the first actual smaller insurance agencies to ever be able to give customers and agents a full flood risk analysis simply by putting an address in on our website.
Wow.
Flood Learning Center. Can you unpack what is a Flood Learning Center?
So the Flood Learning Center, it's all videos, podcasts, blogs. Okay. It covers every state, every flood topic. It covers every single flood map update as it happens with the videos and everything on there. It's absolutely free. Agents can filter by what they're looking for. Maybe they're a real estate agent looking for something. Videos are filtered just by real estate agent, insurance agent, investor, even property managers, you name it. And so they can find the information they need when they need it. There's no kind of, hey, get a quote from me. There's no begging for the business, I'll call it. It simply is there from an educational standpoint.
Dang, that's how long did that take? Well, I guess because you had been doing the videos and the content for so long, so then maybe the actual what all went into like really like launching that freaking Flood Learning Center? Because I know obviously, I mean, you got the content and stuff, but really getting it all into one thing, and maybe even highlight, you know, what was kind of the man hours behind that, right? And I know obviously you're using some virtual assistants and some of the stuff you're doing with your content. Maybe unpack some of that and kind of everything that just went into actually the creation of that learning center.
Really, a lot of it was the content over the 4 years, but that was always my long-term goal is, hey, I want to have a central database where people can find this information free, something bigger than YouTube. Right. You know, something a little more organized than YouTube. You know, I don't take in video well. I would rather take in a blog so they can filter on what content is easiest for them or what they want to receive. Then I partnered with my buddy Marcus Sheridan over at Impact BND, and he actually helped build the template for the Learning Center for me. But, you know, he actually turned me on to some other insurance companies that had done it, and we built something similar to what they had template-wise. You know, we already had the content built, but we still had to tag 5,000 pieces of information, which is where my virtual assistant came into play. You know, we basically tagged 5,000 pieces of information in 3 weeks because I wanted this thing to go live on the same day as the 10-year anniversary of my mom's death, because my mom was a high school educator with another educator who basically gave me a chance in college because I failed college English 5 times, wasn't supposed to go to college. So launching this thing on the 10-year anniversary of her death was important to me from an educational standpoint.
Yeah, man, that's powerful, dude. That's so good, dude. I love that. And I love, you know, what you said. And this is, I hope you guys heard this and I hope y'all took notes on this, because there was a gold nugget. Well, there's multiples, but the gold nugget I heard there is that they have the access to the information when they need it, right? And I think a lot of agents in this day, especially in this day and age, and honestly, and I've been victim of it as well too, right? Is, you know, when you're trying to be that jack of all trades, right, and answer all the phone calls and answer all of the, like, stuff starts to kind of slip through the cracks, right? And so I love that you built something for somebody to, hey, this is when you need it, right? So then it's, hey, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, and you need to know, so like, instead of having to freaking call me and then also feeling almost the obligation to answer that phone call, they can now literally just pop into the Learning Center and gain access to whatever information that they want. That's so good. And then so perfect. We're already getting into the Q&A here. So Mr. Kyle Hoffman, how are you this morning, man? Does it make more sense to buy an NFIP commercial flood policy with the ISO endorsement or a standalone policy with ISO endorsement? What you got on that?
I'm actually a big fan of standalone policies. Just like, you know, when you look at the world of private flood, excess flood, which is probably what he's talking a little bit about there. I'm a big fan of doing just a private policy in that situation, Kyle. One reason is, like with excess and primary, you could have to experience technically 2 different claims, which could take a lot longer process. So anytime I can do that, I'm going to do that standalone policy, because that standalone policy is there to do one thing. And, you know, like many people in niches, you know, they're in that niche, they do extremely well compared to others. So when you start getting into some things that are trying to do everything, I feel that sometimes the coverages cannot be as great.
It's good. It's good. Yeah. And also, guys, if you do have any Q&A, like, feel free. I mean, because you guys, if you can't already tell, like, Chris is literally a wealth of freaking knowledge. And that's, I think, you know, let's pivot a little bit here, still staying within the niche, right? So, okay, now we're niching down. You've got education, you've got all the content, you've got all of this, right? What are you using for your infrastructure to really manage all of this? And I know we talk about it, and like, your freaking tech stack is just, and I know you've spent hours and hours and hours of time on it. Kind of just go through all of that with us. Tell us who you're using, what all you're using it for. And I think that'll be like some serious gold nuggets in there.
My tech stack is actually less than 10 things. The majority of my tech stack is one thing, and that's HubSpot.
Yep.
And everyone's like, oh, well, this system does this better, and this does this better. And I go by the 80-20 rule. Look, I don't need it to do everything at 100%. I need it to do 80% of what I needed to do on the 20% of the things I'm actually using it for. So it doesn't matter how fancy your system is. If it doesn't do what you need it to do, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. And I was like, well, I can't believe you pay that much. I said, look, HubSpot's one of our best employees. It shows up to work every day, and it never calls in. And it's a 24-hour sales rep,
right?
You know, but it's great because, like, my office manager goes in there, and she can see exactly the notes I didn't even put in there. They're automatically logged in there through the recorded phone calls, the emails, whatever. So when she picks the phone up to call the customer, she knows exactly what she's looking at. She doesn't have to come and ask me for 10 different things. All she's got to do is go to the activity record and see it. Just like next week, when she's out, I can just go straight in there, look at it before I respond back to them, knowing exactly what I'm dealing with. So it really helps protect me. From an E&O standpoint, we don't even use an AMS. We built our AMS inside of HubSpot.
Yeah.
I even built our video proposal system in there with a company called PandaDoc, which I know Ben Brown loves, and Vidyard, which is our video hosting platform on our website. And so I've implemented those, and now implementing something with Insight Pro, where we're actually using all their risk data analysis information to push into CRM, push it back out to the video proposal system, where we give the customer a full flood risk analysis. We can tell them how long it would take water to enter their property. We can tell them how high they are above inland flooding, coastal flooding. We can tell them if they're in a 20-year flood zone. We can tell them if 90% of private companies are going to decline their quote before we submit it to them. And then we can put a plan together to help them reduce those things, go to a carrier and get a unique rating model that no one else is getting because of how we're presenting the mitigation risk. So those are some of the things that we're using in HubSpot. We use it for everything. We host our website in there. Our learning center is on HubSpot. So anytime someone's on my website watching my videos, I'm getting notified through apps that they're watching it. I'm getting notified. They're getting follow-up automatically through emails with other videos because of videos they watched on our website. And it's usually not, hey, you watched this video, let me sell you something. It's, hey, you watched this video, so you may like this blog as well. So then when someone comes to me, many times when they pick up the phone for the first time, it's usually to give us their credit card information and to finalize some questions. Because our average user, when they come to us, they've already watched 5 of our videos and consumed 10 of our blogs or 10 of our landing pages. So it's simply answering a couple questions and maybe getting payment information.
That's freaking. What are you paying for your HubSpot?
Right now, it's close to $4,000 a month since I've added all these different things into it because of the way I'm pulling all this data in.
I love that.
One reason too is I hired a developer from Glovebox. It was like taking us next level. And I told someone that's the cool thing about growing in a niche is when you can put money back into the business, you can put it into the customer experience, and you can really see things start to change when you're able to start to invest that money in the experience.
That's good. That's good. We got a quick question for Mr. England for you too before we move on. Chris, can you briefly explain the difference between NFIP and say an Aon Edge?
Ryan, I won't necessarily explain the difference between NFIP and Aon Edge, but let me tell you basically what Aon Edge is first. Aon Edge is one of many private carriers. So I'll explain the difference between NFIP and a private carrier. Now, one is through the National Flood Insurance Program, which is important to understand it's not admitted or non-admitted. Then you've got private, which the majority of them are non-admitted. A lot of admitted are coming along. What does an admitted mean? That's like a State Farm, Allstate, Traveler, something like that. Non-admitted, think about Lloyd's of London. Not admitted are really pushing their way across the U.S. right now, which is great for consumers. It really does a good job of protecting them. But those are the big differences. Private, you can get coverages on residential side more than $250K on residential, more than $500K on commercial. You can get additional living expenses, loss of use. Pricing a lot of times is different on private because they're looking at what we're building out called a flood score. So they can look at that flood score, look at all these different analytics, and right off the bat, your rate may be 60% cheaper than FEMA because of the technology that they're using on the private side. And so that's the big difference between the National Flood Insurance Program and private. I will say I've never seen a FEMA claim settled faster than a private claim. And that's after settling over 2,000 claims in the last 90 days of the year last year. Every one of our private claims was settled faster than their National Flood Insurance Program would have been. I'll tell you another story about the National Flood Insurance Program and the private real quick. And it's a customer I had in Nebraska who switched to a private policy 3 months before a massive flood happened. And she was the only one that had a hotel provided for the next 6 to 12 months, while her neighbors didn't because they had National Flood Insurance Program policies, and she had a private policy.
Wow. And that's, and I love that you take the time to explain that too. And, and there's others out there, right, that are offering the private options. And that's, so maybe, and this is, I have a question for you. How do you know, and maybe this is just something that we need to be doing more proactively on the front end, right? So, but like say I go to close on a house, and I've had it happen before where they kick back those private policies. How would you potentially address that or catch that before it's like, hey, look, now it is a week or two before closing and they're like, oh no, we don't take private, we only do NFIP or something like that. What would be a potential workaround, or is that literally where we can just tell them something like, hey, well, based off of this and this, they're okay to like, how does that really work? Because I've seen it kick back and I'm like, shoot, how was I supposed to know that they didn't want the private? I guess maybe unless I just ask right out the gate.
One of the first questions to ask is, are you doing an FHA loan?
Okay.
That's generally where 90% of the problems come from. And we have some lenders that, oh, we'll accept it, no problem. They get their closing table. Oh, we can't accept private. You told us this 2 weeks ago. but we just realized it.
Mm.
But yeah, generally, I mean, FHA won't accept private yet because FHA does not do loans. They insure them. So they set their own guidelines. And so it's been actually a battle with FHA for several years trying to get them to change that. They opened up for public comment about a year and a half ago. They still haven't made a decision. So it's kind of become a little bit of a nightmare that, you know, your only option for FHA is really through FEMA. We've actually seen it for several customers where the mortgage company will let them close an FHA loan. Then they sell the loan. Then they make them go back to FEMA. And now the rate went up $6,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, I'm ignorant when it comes to P&C and flood insurance, but is flood insurance a requirement for a homeowner if they live in a flood zone, or is there certain levels of flood zones that you have to live in before it's a requirement and then it's just an advisement? Like, how does that exactly work?
It is required if they're in what's called a special flood hazard area, which generally is going to be anything that begins with an A or an E. That's going to be like your 100-year flood zones.
What do you mean begins with an A or an E?
On the coast. A is really going to be across the rest of the country.
Okay.
But if you're in those zones, it's going to be required. Or if you're in an X, if you've ever taken disaster assistance on a property, many times they'll require it as well.
That's good.
Right
That's
on.
good. So, and I want to, before we get into, well, I guess let's answer this, and then I've got a question for you, but because I want to definitely talk about how you've been traveling and just really, dude, and you have been really for years, I swear, just going around the country. But I guess let's answer this here real quick for Mr. Kyle. Are there any specific areas of the country that you're seeing more flood activity over the last few years?
Yes, Kyle, we're seeing it a lot really from the Southeast, let's say from Alabama across to Texas, up through Oklahoma, Nebraska, over to Ohio. Really, that we'll call it that Midwest area, the expanded Midwest. And we're seeing that a lot more. Like, for example, in Birmingham, who really didn't flood much to the last 5 years, had 12 inches of rain in 4 hours, 82 home rescues in 2 hours in Pelham, Alabama, where interstates became rushing rivers. You had Nebraska 3 years ago, where a bomb cyclone happened and ice jams hit a bridge and took out a dam. This weekend in Ohio, where the river was just rapidly rising because of a weekend rainstorm that flooded a lot of properties that have never flooded. Even the guy called me to file a claim, said, I fought my bank on this, and they made me take flood insurance, and I'm so glad that they did now.
Right. And that's literally, and that's when you can say, it's there it's a scam. It's a scam. But when you freaking need it, they're like, oh, thank the Lord, I bought the flood insurance.
So that brings a question to me. When you have a situation like that, like say in Ohio or wherever, right? And obviously there's some people that have flood insurance and they're able to take advantage of it and be protected. Do you see a surge in flood insurance sales from people that are nearby that area, or maybe people that weren't necessarily victims, but some of their friends were victims or anything like that, you know? And I guess the point I'm trying to get at, like when there's a hailstorm in Texas, all of a sudden you see a whole bunch of guys driving to some town to fix all the cars that are damaged. Obviously, we're beating it to the punch when we're selling insurance, but I'm just kind of curious if there are certain trends that you follow based on flood surges that help you identify where you're needed and find your customers a little faster.
Well, we do that, but we also built something out with one of our integrations called Mapsly. So what Mapsly does is we simply click one button called flood claim on a deal in our CRM, and it maps across the country where all of our flood claims are happening. It matches where flood events have happened. Now we know where to create our content and put it. But like you mentioned after that, yes, we do get a big influx of that. But we're using Mapsly also because we've helped build out a flood warning system where it's actually warning our customers before a flood hits their property. Hey, you know, this is what's covered under your policy called loss avoidance, where you can move things to a different part of the property. And this is one of the reasons why we've done the risk address of, hey, where could water enter my property first? Where should I locate my belongings to protect myself long term? And so, yeah, that's, you know, when I work with my VA on content creation, that's the first thing we go to is we go to views, we go to areas, we look at the map, we see where things are happening. We want to get ahead of the storm on creating the content. So when something happens, the content is there when people want it. Like I tell people, look, people may not have the question for you today, but it's important that you have the content available when they do have the question. That might be 6 months from here.
That's good. That's good, man.
Well
and
said.
That thing, just how it all freaking is synced and works. And man, that's just freaking amazing. And that maybe the back end there is part of it's going to kind of be the answer of the question I'm about to ask. But before, because I do want to talk about traveling and speaking and stuff like that, because I feel like that's been the next level for you, right? Where you've been doing all the content and stuff, but now you're getting on the stages and really, I mean, making massive impacts to where you're like speaking in like with the government and stuff like that, right? Like recreating all this stuff, you know, at that high of a level. But I want to backtrack a little bit, because even how we first met, Chris, and it was before Closers Click. It was through a referral relationship, right? Because obviously, hey, flood. I had a flood question, right? And it's like, talk to Chris. And then we obviously got to connect, became friends, everything like that. But, you know, what I'm curious of is, what were like 2 to 3 things that really benefited you when you were building out, dude? Because I swear you had like every single State Farm agency, every single Allstate agency, all these independent agents that are just referring you business. What were 2 to 3 things that you did there to kind of, you know, manifest those relationships, but then also really keep them right to where you're just getting, I mean, all kinds of flood insurance leads? Again, not client facing, but from the agents.
I will tell you this, that was actually a complete accident. The intention was never to build this audience of insurance agents. It just kind of happened. And then our wholesaler developed as an accident. And now that's where most of our business comes from. But at the end of the day, what I tell every one of our referral partners, it's our job to make sure on the flood side, we're basically your flood department. We're an extension of your team. Our job is to make you look like a rock star so that you have every other piece of business and you have a client for life.
That's good.
And so that way you can spend your time on the relationships and the things that are making you money. You know, we'll say the captive agents who get maybe paid by a policy app, they're not paying them to sell flood insurance. I talked to one captive agent who spent 3.5 hours on a $500 flood policy. When they came to us, we had things figured out in 10 minutes. And that's when they see, wow, I could have made that captive trip had I not been wasting all my time on this.
Yeah.
You know, look how many more sales producers I could have hired had I not been spending my time on this. It's the same reason why when we bring on a referral partner, we build a link for them. I build a separate video for every single one of our referral partners. And I talk about that agency in that video. I talk about us. I have their logo coming down. I have our logo coming up. I have a handshake in the middle. So the customer is visualizing the partnership, the extension of their team. They don't think that that agent's just handing the customer off. Same thing at renewal when we're doing a lot of communicating through the agent. At the end of the day, it's all about enhancing that relationship and make sure they have a customer for life and making them look like the rock star. At the end of the day, it's all about them. We're just here to help on the flow.
Yep. I love that, man. And you lead with education, dude. I mean, that's guys, is everybody hearing the theme of every single guest speaker that we have on here? Is that when you lead with what? Value and education. What do you know, right?
I will answer the question you haven't asked me yet. And everyone's like, when are you going to do a rater? When are you going to do a rater? I said, probably never. And they're like, why? I said, because the rater doesn't show the true risk. At the end of the day, it's our job to show the true risk. I can give anybody cheap flood insurance, but what happens if it doesn't stay cheap?
Right.
What happens if it doesn't pay out because it didn't have the right forms? It doesn't do you any good.
All right. So speaking of loss, if there is ensuing loss from a flood, for example, if a flood causes a fire, will both policies, BPP and flood, respond, or only one policy?
Generally, only one. It's like having duplicate coverage, but it depends how the loss occurs. So I won't use fires generally because the flood part, I think I know what he's talking about here because we actually had this situation happen. A house burned down. They wanted to know if their house was going to be covered by flood because the fire department put the fire out. So that wasn't considered a flood. But here is one that did happen. House is sitting along a river. River starts to flood, and it erodes about 2 days. The bank away, the house collapsed. It was actually covered by flood because the original peril that caused the damage was the flood, and the water had entered the home as the home collapsed into the river.
Okay. Yeah, that is a good, okay. That makes sense now because if it's, all right, so you got your personal, okay, and then the flood. That's a good question, Kyle. I like that.
The key there is that inundation was the inside of the property inundated with water from outside the home. Surface water generally.
Yep. Okay, good. Well, real quick, how did you learn all this stuff about flood? We're talking about education. I'm actually curious. I haven't asked you that. How did you learn all this shit, dude?
Well, I'll start back at my master's. So I started my master's degree the day Hurricane Katrina hit. I was not supposed to do flood. I was thinking weapons of mass destruction, hostage negotiation. You know, I've taken classes in bioterrorism. I could show you how to use rice and put it in an umbrella and kill someone. I mean, those are the kinds of things that I wanted to do with it. Here's the problem. Katrina hit.
Can I get your phone number?
And, I studied like the whole 9/11 thing and all that. I wasn't supposed to do flood, but Katrina hits. I ended up studying Katrina for 2 years. So I ended up graduating with my major portion of my master's degree in hazard and flood mitigation. And I was about 2 classes short of having bioterrorism. I wanted to be a local emergency management agency, work as a local emergency manager, but I couldn't find a job. So I was like, I went to work for Liberty Mutual. I said, I'm going to do it for 6 months so I can get a national catastrophe, because that's really what I wanted to do, because I'm also a storm spotter. And so I really enjoyed doing that. And then what happened is I got into the sales part, and I created this education program for schools where I did stuff for staff appreciation, student achievement, parent involvement. 4 years later, I'm working with 1,200 schools, and that's where every one of our leads comes from. Literally, all I do is show up to the event for an appreciation event, and usually walked away with 40 to 50 leads for that event. And so that's why when I went independent, it was all about education for me. It always will be about education for us. And that's why when we hire staff members, I want them to people who have either experienced flood, they know someone who's experienced flood, and I want to hire storytellers, because that's what I want them sharing things with our customers, our referral partners, things they've actually been through where they can actually relate to them. It's the same reason why a lot of our staff members have come from captive agencies where we do a lot of business with. They can relate to the struggle that they've been through on flood every day.
That's good.
Facts tell, stories sell, right? So you're a storm spotter? Is that just something you do casually as a hobby on the side, or?
My wife really wouldn't let me do it anymore because I couldn't get life insurance when I was doing it. But back in college, I was a volunteer on the local hazmat team, and I helped write the disaster plan for our college for my master's degree. But what happened is, what's funny is there's this famous meteorologist in Birmingham, Alabama called James Spann. And when he comes on, people know that you got to take the weather seriously. Well, I bagged his groceries growing up, and I'm the only person that probably bagged his groceries, and he's certified as a storm spotter. So what a storm spotter was is 25 years ago, you didn't really have Doppler radar. The only way you knew a tornado was on the ground is if we actually called it in, could show the damage and everything. And so that was the only way. So through college, I had one that I got probably within like 500 feet of. The sky lightens up at night is the only way you knew where it was at. It was moving around like crazy. And that was the only way they knew that it was on the ground causing damage, because they didn't have the technology yet. You don't use them as much today as you did then, but we were a vital part of really tornado preparedness back then.
Wow, man, there's probably got to be some crazy stories. What's the craziest storm you ever spotted or were chasing?
Probably the one in college where it was just moving all around at night. The only way you knew where it was moving was the sky would just lighten up because of the lightning. And I mean, it was just, that's how I tell people that's the most thrilling part. I kind of compare it to my days of repoing vehicles with Enterprise. It's like gone in 60 seconds. You got this whole rush.
That's good, man. I don't know if I knew that about you, that you used to storm spot. That's really cool, man. But I think you're 100% correct though. Cause when there wasn't the technology in that time, that you are a vital piece of that, right? Twister wasn't all, BS. It's like, hey man, that's the thing, man. I love that.
What's funny is too, I was in Dallas last week, man. All these tornadoes are popping up. And for the event, they decided to put me on the 48th floor. I said, great, I'll be above the tornado.
Right. That's funny. Real quick before we get to the stage, traveling and stage and speaking and stuff, there's been a lot of talk in the group recently just about virtual assistants, right? Like, what are you using them for? What are you doing? So can you kind of cover, because you're using virtual now, granted, this is again because of how you're set up, but still, I think you have some really cool, unique ways that you are using virtual assistants within your agency. Could you highlight some of the things, daily tasks, even just the creative part of it? Can you kind of cover some of that?
Yeah. So I'll tell you this. I've been using virtual assistants now probably about 5 years. I started with CoverDesk for about 4 years. Awesome company. They did some incredible things to help me out because I went through a really bad situation lately. I've been using Viva VAs because of the relationship with El Salvador. And I've also done a lot on my own. And so I've kind of had the experience of each one of these. But my rule on VAs is they're there to help my licensed staff. They are just as important as my licensed staff. What I mean by that is I don't want our licensed staff doing anything that doesn't require a license. And I'll give you that example. We have someone who just does quoting. We have a VA who's a renewal manager. They're calling the banks. They're making sure renewals are getting issued. Where I'm doing maybe 5% of the work on renewals, I have a person who writes our content. I have a video editor. I have a social media manager. We're about to have a phone person. Literally anything that doesn't require a license, the VAs are doing it. Now, I've looked at hiring someone who in the U.S. that handles those things that doesn't have a license, but from a cost standpoint, it really just doesn't make sense. I would rather go and hire someone who has a license. And that way they can do the 10, a VA can handle 90-95% of what we need them to do. Literally, when a lead comes in from our website, from our referral partner, our office manager or licensed person doesn't even see it until it gets through the quota and it's sitting on their desk ready to go to make sure, she's making sure it's right. She's sitting out the video proposal. When they view the video proposal, it's automatically updating the deal from quote ready to quote sent or quote received when they open it. And then I've automatically got the automation going and all that different stuff.
That's good. For the video proposals, are they sending out you on a video or are they sending out themselves?
They're sending out me.
Okay.
I've got all these videos pre-built. I'm actually building some more out this week as we add in this new flood risk analysis report. Now, here's my question. Here's my thing on video. My rule, though. If a customer or a prospect or referral partner asks us more than 2 questions through email, our guidelines is we respond to that email with a video answering those questions. Myself included. Usually if somebody emails me for the first time, a potential new referral partner, my first response back to them is just a video I make real quick with Vidyard inside of HubSpot introducing myself. That way now they have what I call an emotional connection.
Yep.
Yeah, now they can see you. You said something that I just need to unpack real fast. You said you're using Viva?
Viva. Yeah,
Viva, V-I-V-A?
Yeah, we start using them a lot for stuff in South America because the accent is more neutral for the U.S. But also in the Philippines, they get hit with a lot of typhoon stuff, and they can go down for a week. And that
the Thai food is bad. I've had Thai food. I was down for a week too. It's got to be careful with it. And you said their relationship with El Salvador was why you were using. I need your help on that because I'm looking for a Spanish-speaking or Spanish-speaking VAs.
They have Spanish, but the reason we picked El Salvador, though, as I said, the Philippines gets hit really hard with typhoons, and they'll go down for a week, 2 weeks. We had an employee we didn't even know about that had 3 feet of water in their house and kept working the whole time with no roof. During the summertime, heat waves can take out your power and your internet there. And so we did not want to be all exposed in one area. We wanted to balance it out.
Yep. We use Viva as well. Great company. And CoverDesk is also an amazing company. Andy Priestman with CoverDesk and then Rob Lopez with Viva. Both of them amazing companies. I would recommend either or to anybody because their operation is like both of them are just freaking squeaky, freaking clean, right? And I think that's another thing that people sometimes they'll go cheap with a virtual assistant, right? But then it's like, what do you have set up to make sure that they're not going to take all your data, right? And I've been seeing more talk of people just going direct, but there's so much more. And there's really so much liability and exposure, especially depending on the information that they're handling and working, right? That if you don't have the proper security, like I know, like Priestman, I mean, they track more, like they're more regulated and track every single keystroke, like more than freaking Wall Street, right? So it's like, okay, yeah, maybe I'll just go to that, right? Because then it really does protect you as an agent. But then it also creates a relationship within the industry, right? I think
I'll tell you why I went to why I went to CoverDesk originally is because I tried to do it on my own and I decided to pay someone through PayPal and we let them go and they tried to hack my PayPal account for $2,000. I'm literally on the phone with PayPal as they're trying to hack it.
Wow.
Thankfully, they didn't get the money, but Andy helped me through a situation and I ended up using them for 4 years. I didn't leave them because anything bad happened. They're a great company. I'd go back to use them today. The only reason I did is because I was building a house and lumber costs skyrocketed and I had to figure something else out on my own. And it just so happened that I had a friend who had a relationship with someone over there who's been able to help me. And we've hired some people within the pool of people they know because I have a rule of, I like to hire people within it. If I find an outstanding candidate that joins us, I like to hire people from around them, and that's been my approach on VAs. I won't just hire anybody.
That's good. That's good, man. That's really good. Well, so then let's, because we don't have too much longer, but I do want to highlight this, and I've said it now like 3 to 4 times. But so obviously, you were traveling, just recording content, which I freaking love that. Anybody watching this and probably nobody else in the group has ever just traveled around the entire country, like road tripping it to shoot content next to flood zones in different states. Cause then you've got content for those states and all that stuff. And that's amazing. But now I've seen you take it to the next level, man. So kind of talk to us about even that first big stage, like what, and outside of an event, right? Cause I know you're talking with like congressman or some, I mean, you're talking with like freaking high up officials. And I'm pretty sure you wore that hat, right? And the guy got a little mad or whatever, but what was that first step? Like what did somebody like connect you guys? Did you just go to something, or like what was that thing that really drove you to that next level?
Here's a secret. It was a YouTube video.
No.
Literally, like someone booked me for an event. It's because someone saw me on YouTube. They started asking other people about me to make sure that I was legit. And then they reached out to me.
Wow.
That's generally where most of our stuff has come from. Is, hey, I saw your stuff on YouTube. I checked with other people in the industry first, and they kind of brought the two together. Now, I will say this, you know, one thing that as I've gone to the next level, though, I've had to change that mindset. Like I tell people, the imposter syndrome. I was having, you know, this conversation with someone. I do it actually right away. I got off the call here. I have my coaching call with David Carruthers. He's helped me from going from thinking about the $50 account to thinking about the $50,000 account. He's helped me change my image a little bit, the way I dress. When I'm doing these big presentations of, you know, understanding your audience, you don't dress the same way for every audience, you know, transitioning more to CEO, face of the company. So he's helped me a lot on that. The poop hat, you know, as I said, it's kind of started out, but you know, I've transitioned a lot away from it now as I've gotten into some.
I made him wear it, guys. I was like, you got to wear that poop hat, man.
Well, I do. That's where I started with the marketing. It was the whole point. I still wear some silly hats in my videos and all that stuff. And I'll never forget. You know, at the end of the day, I'm a marketer first. I'm an insurance agent second. Don't forget that.
Yep, I love that. So what's the biggest stage you think you've been on, or what was the time you were most nervous to speak?
I'll tell you the biggest stage I was probably on, and the one I failed on, was I spoke at Elevate. I think it was 2018. I'm speaking on technology. We've just started using HubSpot. All the technology in the room fails. My technology fails. We have like a power glitch, and I have to do storytelling to describe how I'm using technology to people.
That's tough.
It was terrible.
How perfect.
Yeah.
You know, I haven't really done a ton of keynote speaking on huge stages yet. I've done some stuff with Marcus's company where I did some digital presentations and stuff like that. But what, you know, you asked me how I get on all these stages too is I don't pay anybody in our team commission. Everybody in our team gets a base salary plus a portion of revenue. And I was like, oh, that's just policies, right? No, that's anything that comes in. That might be a flood zone change. That might be a mitigation project. Let's just say that a company pays me $5,000 to go speak. Every one of my team members gets a portion of that speaking fee as a part of revenue. And sometimes my wife gets on to me for that. But I think it's really important that everybody in our team gets a portion of all that, because I'm out there maybe getting to do what I really enjoy because someone else is doing something else. And it's important to me that they get rewarded for that. But as the company grows, so does their paycheck. Just like when it goes, well, you can't pay an office manager or CSR that kind of money. You absolutely can. You know, oh, that's not going to pay for your second employee. That's fine. I'll pay them $100,000 a year if they're making me $200,000. That's just common sense.
Right.
But, you know, if it means someone doing those small things allows me to go and do the things I enjoy, I can't put a price on that.
Yep, dude, that is freaking spot on. And I think sometimes we forget that, right? And I know I'm about to feel just as grateful this week, right? Because I'm gone. Like I'm out until I'm home on Sunday, man. I'm gonna be on the beach, right? And now again, it's a little bit different, but still, it's like having those people in place and not being really greedy, honestly, is almost what it is, right? Like, don't be freaking cheap. If you're getting to go pursue that, especially, I love you talked about that CEO mindset shift, right? Like really becoming that face and really the leadership role is like, don't forget people, like in any agents that, you know, are watching this, that are traveling a lot, that are getting to go do what they want to do because of their agency. Don't forget the people that are helping run that agency, right? That are allowing you to do that. That's really good, Chris. That was super powerful.
I'll be honest with you. We recruit people that are not being treated like that. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to right now that haven't had a vacation in 3 years, haven't had a pay raise in 3 years. One of the conditions is when someone comes on board with us now, their first week with us is a paid vacation.
That's awesome.
And then they start the following Monday because I want them coming in mentally refreshed. And like, well, can you do that? I said, look, it's well worth the money to do that, to know that they're mentally refreshed, but it also sets the expectation with them because we do unlimited time off. But we make everyone take a week of vacation every quarter because we're completely remote. And I said, right off the bat, I want them to know the culture and know how serious we are about the culture.
So when they sign, so you send them before they even start, like first day with the flood insurance.
Well, we just include with their first paycheck.
Yeah. Okay. Dang, man, that's freaking good. I didn't know you did that. That's
I just started doing that a couple months ago,
bro. You gotta. Hey, I'll call myself a VA, man. I'm here in Texas, dude.
No, we don't do it. We don't do it on the VA part yet.
Yeah.
But we are doing it on the W-2 part.
Cool. Yep.
Nice.
And that's good.
Yeah, Coach Burt talks about that kind of philosophy, that you don't have a money problem, you have a people problem. You don't need more money, you need more people. So
well, you need the right people. That's why I tell
built.
people we won't hire just anybody. Like I tell people, we won't hire salespeople. And you're crazy. I was like, no, we're not a sales organization. We want people who actually are not thriving in that high stress sales environment. You know, I don't need you to sell. I just need you to wow people away with your attitude and your experience.
Yep. Good stuff, man. This has been fantastic. I do want to respect your time as well as everybody else. But I want to take advantage of this moment too. Obviously you have a ton of knowledge in the insurance space, in the flood insurance space. I'm curious, are there any upcoming trends? Is there anything to look out for? Like if you're an agent out there that's selling P&C or selling flood insurance, is there anything on the horizon that you envision coming that agents should prepare themselves for? Kind of where do you see that business or that market going?
Yeah, you're going to start to see a lot of the flood market probably turn into a lot of the California and the Florida market of what's going on right now because the amount of floods are happening across the country. Something else I'll tell you too, if you're an agent and you write through the National Flood Insurance Program, pay attention to your renewals on 2.0. There's a questionnaire you have to do. If you don't do it, your customers could be non-renewed, creating a big E&O issue for you.
That's good. I didn't know that. We pretty much do everything private, but that's good to freaking know.
Why are you specifically picking on Florida and California as far as trends to watch for?
Because those are the like wildfire in California and just the home insurance market in Florida. Okay. What you're seeing happen with insurance companies, where some of them are either going out of business. For example, like Assurant Flood just announced that they're no longer going to offer primary flood insurance. That was one of the top private flood insurance carriers in the country.
Wow.
I think they had like 41,000 policyholders that are going to be impacted. Wow. They're still in excess. They're still in NFIP. They're still in commercial, just not primary. And you're starting to see that a lot. And those are some things you really, like I tell everybody, not every carrier is the same. You got to understand forms. You got to look at long-term rate stability. You got to work with the carriers to try to reduce the risk. Those are the carriers that are going to want to work with you.
So when you say those 41,000 people are impacted, they're impacted through loss of coverage?
Yeah, they're all going to get non-renewal letters starting July 1st.
And then at that point, it's on them to go find new primary coverage.
Private options or go back to the National Flood Insurance Program. But here's the catch. If you go back to the National Flood Insurance Program, you got to do it at least 31 days because if you get within 30 days, they're still doing a wait period.
Yep.
People don't think about that when moving from private to NFIP.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, so there's a standardized, like, unless it's now granted there's an exception if it's for closing, if I remember correctly, right? But
it has to be a loan closing though. That's
loan
I just talked to someone today. Well, I just closed, but you didn't do a loan, so it's still a 30-day wait.
Good, that's good.
So go do a loan for $1 if you don't want the 30-day wait.
Literally, that's funny. That's good.
Right on, man. So why would you maybe encourage an agent who's not doing flood insurance? He's a P&C agent. And maybe he's considering getting in flood insurance. Like why would an agent want to identify that market segment or pick up that segment? Is it based on maybe where they're geographically selling or educating consumers specifically? Or there's some other reasons why an agent should look at adding flood into their package?
The number one reason is first of all, it's the number one natural disaster in the U.S. And the second thing is it's the number one E&O claim. If you don't offer it and you could have offered it, it falls back on you.
Yep.
I can't tell you in the Midwest when Nebraska flooding happened, people would pick up the phone and call me and say, look, my insurance agent told me I didn't have to have it because the bank wasn't requiring it. Right off the bat, that's an E&O issue.
Yep.
Because 30% of flood claims actually happen in areas where they're not required. Most areas, and one of the reasons when we do that video proposal, we actually show them how flood claims are happening by zone all the way down to their zip code. So they understand the true risk.
Yep. It's good. It's good, man. Right. And also, real quick before you close this out here, guys, Chris is also a wholesaler as well. So, hey, you know what? You're doing your thing over here, and you want to work with an extremely professional team. Obviously, everything he just dropped here on this call is exactly why we sent him our flood stuff. And so, again, reach out to Chris if you want to. The guy, again, him and his team, they just run. And seriously, I mean, I think the last one we sent you was done literally in like freaking 15, 20 minutes. It was crazy. And then I love the co-branding and everything. So, again, any agents that's watching this that wants to be able to offer that product, again, cover themselves E&O wise, but not necessarily have to do it themselves and just refer it to a specialist, Chris is definitely your guy for that. So
absolutely. How would somebody find you, Chris, other than obviously on Facebook? How would somebody locate you?
Your phone number? Can email me, flood@floodinsuranceguru.com. You can go to my website, floodinsuranceguru.com. At the end of the day, you can find me on LinkedIn. Like I tell people, it's our job, know the risk, understand the risk, reduce the risk, and help you create long-term rate stability.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you guys for tuning in. This has been certainly another power-packed call on the show. Joe, if you have any last thoughts, before we wrap it up, just bring it on home for us, brother.
Yeah, man. No, I just want to, again, thank you, Chris, for taking the time, dude. And I want to give you a kudos and a shout out because I've seen your early videos, because I go through and look through your YouTube and stuff. And just from where you started to where you are now, dude, like, that is why you're on this call, because you're obviously freaking winning, but you're being vulnerable in that, right? And so I love that. Thank you so much for being on the call. Again, guys, make sure, look it up, Flood Insurance Guru. Literally, you Google it, you will find him freaking everywhere, I'm sure. But again, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Tony.
Also, real quick too, if you want to create videos, you want to try to have a VA do it, connect with me. I'll try to connect with someone who can do it for you. Not making any money here. I'll be glad just to make the connection for you.
That's awesome.
Perfect, man. You heard it there, guys. floodinsuranceguru.com. Look up the man, Chris Green. And thank you guys so much again for tuning in for Winning on Wednesday. Joe, Chris, thank you all for being part of the show. And we'll see all you guys next week, 9 a.m. Central.
The week's not over, baby. Come on. It's Wednesday.
Right.
Let's go win, Syndicate members. Love you guys. We'll catch y'all later.